Welcome to Strong and Supported Pelvic Health. This is where we are going to talk all things pelvic floor, pregnancy, postpartum, fitness, weightlifting, and even overcoming pain, because you deserve to feel strong and supported no matter what season you're in. I want you to walk away from every episode with a few nuggets of applicable wisdom, feeling more empowered in your wellness journey. Let's get started.
All right, so welcome to Strong and Supported Pelvic Health. I am on a mission to help women feel empowered, seen, and heard through their journey, their life, whatever it may hold, right? Whether you're pregnant, postpartum, or have never been pregnant and you just want to learn a little bit more about your body, you're in the right place. So today I am with Serene, who is a postpartum doula and a midwife student. Serene, could you hop on and explain a little bit more about who you are, what you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I'm Serene. I am a birth and postpartum doula and a student midwife, like you just told everybody. I am the founder of Atokli Birth and Wellness. That's my doula, my little small doula business. And I am a student midwife with Aurora Midwifery in Mesa, Arizona. And so I accompany women into the birthing space or the postpartum space as a doula, as a service that can look like emotional, physical, mental, spiritual support during the birthing process, during pregnancy. I often accompany all the way from prenatal to at least 6 to 8 weeks postpartum. That can vary depending on someone's needs when they feel like they're needing me. I do offer further out postpartum services as well, where I will accompany past that 8 weeks. I often have families that call me in when baby's at 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, just because that postpartum period is not just 2 weeks after you've given birth, it is 2 years after you've given birth. And so I strongly wrap my services around being able to support families and women, even within that 2-year range, which often can just look like some very basic childcare. But usually when it comes to the infants, there's a little bit more care going on there and experience and knowledge needed for that. I do offer, cooking meals, meal prepping, some of the things that tend to be really hard during the postpartum period for families if they don't have support. As a student midwife, I am currently in phase 1 on the pathway to getting a license here in the state of Arizona through the apprenticeship route, which is called PEP or PEP. And so that's relatively new, and it's an area that has only enhanced my ability to do doula work because of the knowledge and the knowledge and experience that I'm gathering, having to learn more about the actual birthing process, about different options and choices, different medical, I don't know if anomalies is the word, but different types of occurrences that can happen in the area of pregnancy for women when it comes to our bodies, when it comes to what's happening in our bodies, and also just a different perspective around the many, many different ways that birth can go and be a really beautiful experience for families, and how we can ultimately shape that experience for families by giving them informed consent, and the ability to make decisions and choices from a place of inner knowing and intuition. So yeah, that's me. That's what I do. That's the path that I'm on right now. And I'm really excited to be in this work. I am super passionate about it. It is super fulfilling for me to see families and women step into their power in this very intimate and vulnerable time. That is a really big transition in their life. So
Yeah, I think that's amazing what you do. And I'm glad that people like you exist, because I know when I was going through what I went through for pregnancy and having the birth of our son, I would have loved to have had someone like you kind of there to nurture and guide and support me. And even, like you said, feel like they could step into their power, basically. Like I just felt like I was taken and I was like funneled through versus like it wasn't anything that I felt in charge of. And that's scary. So to have somebody help you kind of prepare yourself to understand what that really looks like or could look like, that would have been a beautiful experience. So I'm grateful for what you do for families. When we were talking a few weeks ago, and kind of when I snooped on your Instagram, you've explained that birth can be like a ceremony. Can you explain a little bit more about your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I am in my own culture, which is a Mexican Mexica culture. It's the indigenous roots to Mexico. Midwifery, also known as parteria or being a partera in the community, is a very sacred role. It was very important in indigenous communities in Mexico, and it's still super important today across many indigenous communities in the world. The thought of birth being a ceremony really comes from those old teachings, those old ways that our ancestors used to practice. You think back to when we didn't have hospitals. Hospitals are relatively new. They weren't really introduced until around like late 1800s, 1900s. And when you think back to, well, how are we giving birth before hospitals and medicine were introduced, before we were being told that you were supposed to give birth this certain way? And really, if you look back on the history of how birth became a hospital-oriented event, there is a lot of trauma involved, as well as experimentation on women, that birth became this thing that needed to be experimented on. How this phenomenon, this anomaly of another human, right, coming into the world, needed to be analyzed, needed to be controlled, because it was so I don't think we as humans could really understand it, that our bodies could just do this thing naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I go back to those ancestral roots and what we were doing before then across many communities all over the world. What were women and families doing to birth their babies? And if you look into any textbooks or literature around just those cultural teachings, I use Mexico because that's my cultural roots, but you could look literally probably anywhere in any indigenous community, or just any literature that talks about, before medicine was introduced, and find that birth was held in this sacred container. It was a space where even now you're at your most vulnerable. You're to be protected. You can't, you think of it as like a very, it's very primal, right? So think of like a deer that's giving birth. When deer are giving birth in the wild, they don't really have much of a fight or flight reflex anymore. And they're very vulnerable. So if a predator were to come in, like the predator could easily take advantage of the deer. Humans are the same way. So it's a very vulnerable, very intimate space. And I think our ancestors, before the medicine, before the hospitals were introduced, they knew to treat that space with care, with nurturing, with safety, and knew that the body was going to do what it needed to do as long as it was protected and felt safe. Otherwise, our species would not be here today. And I think being able to honor, right, the anomaly that I think science has tried really, really hard to explain, which their birth is still very much needing more and more research constantly, for us to know more about it, for us to understand it better. but it's one of those fields that it's a little bit, it lacks, I think a lot of maternal and women's health lacks in many areas, but definitely in birth and pregnancy. And so I think we've gone really far towards making everything about the science versus just being able to honor what our bodies naturally have always known how to do. And that's the ceremonial piece to it, is we don't have to have an explanation of why our bodies can do this. It's just an amazing thing. I remember my first birth so vividly. I had never seen someone give birth in person before. And this was, me starting out in my first birth as a doula. And I cried because there is a moment in birth that you just can't explain, right? And to me, that is ceremonial, that is sacred, to have that experience, to understand like there was a human being in a woman's body or in this person's body, and now there is someone being human in the next moment. And that is a very just incredible, beautiful thing to experience. And I think we have forgotten how to honor that coming into life, and how sacred that is, how beautiful that is. That is the ceremony. So when we talk about birth as a ceremony, it's being able to honor that experience, but also honor the mother's experience that is going through that process, because not only is the baby being born, but so is the mother, right? She's going from this stage of maidenhood to the stage of motherhood. And that is a very big transition. In a lot of Indigenous cultures, we talk about those sacred transitions for both men and women, right? We all start as babies, we all start as infants, and then we transition at that age around 13 years old, right? Men's voices drop and women start their period, and then we're moving into our adolescent years, right? And then we move into that adulthood, which usually that transition becomes the motherhood, fatherhood transition, right? We have our first child and move into that next phase of life. And then from there, that last phase is our elderhood, right? Being an elder. So I think being able to honor those really big transitions is such a key point of us being human and going through this cyclical life that we have. And it's, I think, important to stop, because our society moves so fast, as we are going through these transitions, and to be able to be present with that transition as we're going through it. So that's also the ceremony, right? Is like bringing more presentness to the changes that are happening for us. Like I was saying just a little bit earlier, the going into that postpartum period is really, really intense a lot of times for families, especially I would say in today's society. And it's important to me as a doula, as a midwife, to help honor families as they go through that, because they're having to also now experience life in a different way. And there is oftentimes a lot of compassion and love and gentleness that is needed in that time while we figure that out, while families figure that out, because you're coming to terms with this new person that you're holding in your hands, but also this new person that's right here. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you definitely are forever changed and kind of transformed. So I think that's really beautiful, how you've described it, and kind of what you've been talking about of like giving honor to it. What does that look like in kind of the birthing process to allow that space to slow down, to give the honor to it? What does that look like?
So that is a great question. I think that can look however you decide to envision it, right? As I am doing this work, as a doula, even as a student midwife, I am constantly changing, because every single birth, every single family that I support teach me something about not only about myself, but about the birthing experience, and just the very many ways that it can be so different for everybody. You know, we're all raised differently. We all have our different set of beliefs. We all might come from different cultures or different religious backgrounds, and just all different kinds of things, right? And so I've found that I've had to just expand myself into this incredible openness of being receptive and open to all people, all backgrounds, all culture, all things. And find, as I'm working with a family or working with a specific individual, what is it that's going to make this sacred for them? What is the most important to them? What things do they value? What do they have a culture that they, come from, or things that they're interested in? Do I have things that I know that are similar that I can help them to bring that feeling of a ceremony to them, that this is so special for them, right? It is. So I think it can be highly dependent on some of those factors. A good example of what it could look like is being able to have those conversations with them. I think a lot of times families and individuals tend to almost minimize how special this time period can be. I think our societies and our culture in the United States has done a really great job of making us minimize how sacred this time is. Like, oh, you're pregnant, go to the OBGYN, you got 5 minutes in there, all right, you're done. In our midwifery practice at Aurora, we spend a whole hour with families doing just their prenatal care versus, a lot of OBGYNs, oftentimes it's like they have 5 minutes with their OBGYN, they check in with them, they check them, they're done. It's not really this special creating connection and conversation around the process that's taking place. And I think even just bringing that conversation around the process helps to create that sacredness of like, hey, this is a really special time. Ask all your questions. We want to hear what troubles someone's having, what kind of fears are someone having. Can we create conversation around that and bring more peace, bring a little less stress, bring more education, bring more options and informed choice, right? What makes something sacred is someone else's ability to make the decision of what they want for their experience, right? And then when we have to swivel, when we have to flex around the changes that birth can bring, we are constantly making sure that those decisions are coming from what they want, from what their choices are, in an informed way, right? In an educated way. I think that helps to minimize trauma for families, is that they get the option, they get the choice, they know why they're making the decision that they're making. They're not just being told to make it. That makes the experience sacred for them. I think also I talk a lot with families about their space, their birthing space. In the hospitals, it's really bright. It's super bright. Things can be kind of rushed. They're constantly trying to, I think oftentimes, and I'm not saying everybody, but most of the time they're throwing all these options and information at you. And a lot of times clients, not everyone understands doctor talk, right? And that can be a lot to navigate. So I talk a lot with families about birthing space and environment. What do you want? What do you want the space to feel like? Do you want this to be a peaceful, blissful space? Who do you want in your space? What's going to make you feel safe in your space? Do you want music? Do you want a certain kind of lighting? A lot of times in hospitals, you can create that space. It's not off the table. And I think not a lot of people know that. They kind of expect that if I go into the hospital, I just have to have those bright lights and all the loud beeping sounds. But when I have clients that are thinking about hospital births, I kind of ask them questions and say, what if you brought a little speaker that has some music that you really like? What if we brought some plastic flicker candles, right, and placed them around and kind of created this different setting for you, right? If we're going to be in the hospital, um, what if we brought some essential oils? A lot of hospitals will allow essential oils. We kind of have to inform them, but just bringing in these different elements, right, that are making the environment feel more like what the client might want, or just feel more safe and more intimate. To me, all of these factors are what lead to creating this ceremonial sacred space. But it's all based off of the elements, the values, the visions that the client and the family is having for what they want. It's not me. I help to bring out the information that's going to help create that space for them.
Yeah.
And that's
kind of like a facilitator of it, and not like inflicting your own beliefs and systems onto them, but more of just helping them understand that what's an option. They can actually change the environment. And oftentimes when you change your environment, it changes your state, you know? Yeah. There was a lot of, like, when you mentioned hospital births, like that's what I had. And yeah, I had no control over my environment. But if I could have known and planned, you know, and been like, this is the environment that I want to bring this child into the world, yeah, I would have changed some things, you know? So I think that's a beautiful way to put it, and how everyone experiences that ceremony differently. And then the time that you can actually spend with your clients is amazing to help them understand, because I'm in the medical field, and there was things that I had no idea what was going on. And then when you're in the moment and you're scared and you don't know what's going on and you're in pain, like, you don't know what choices that you would have made that you wanted to make now, because you can't. Like, it's just, but had we made them before, then at least I would have known how to navigate those changes, you know, in the moment. So I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. I think that that's why doulas and midwives are so important at this time, in this day and age, because, you know, doulas have a very specific set of skills to help create birth plans and help to ask these questions so that people are having better experiences. If you look at evidence-based research for both doulas and midwives, we help lower rates of cesareans in the United States, or just in general. I'm sure a lot of the literature is not just for here, but in various countries. And I don't think that is talked about enough. You know, I think midwives definitely get a bad rap, you know, because a lot of times, from what I've seen, when something goes awry, and I'm not saying that, you know, there aren't things, you know, midwifery is not perfect, just the way that doctors and OBGYNs aren't perfect. But a lot of times it's the bad stories or the bad things. You know, when they give transfer or transport like stats on midwives, or you'll hear nurses or doctors say like, oh, the midwives have to transfer all the time, or they have to transport all the time. But a lot of times we're not transferring or transporting because something's gone wrong. A lot of times we're transferring or transporting because we've seen something that could be a yellow flag, and we've made a call about something. Or the other one that is pretty significant is some women are laboring at home if they're doing a home birth, and they literally just want an epidural. They're like, I'm done with laboring. You know, it might be a first-time mom that is having her first baby. She might have chosen to do it at home, and she might just be done laboring. She's been doing it for 24 hours, and she wants that epidural. So if she asks us or tells us, can I go in, like, I'm done here? Of course, we're going to support her decision for that. And that becomes a transfer of care. So I think that there is, a lot that midwives and doulas can provide in terms of being able to help clients get the birth that they want, being able to help advocate for them. That is often looked over, and also just the general, like, statistics of how helpful the types of settings that doulas and midwives can create for clients are for better birth experiences and better outcomes of babies being born.
Yeah, I think like what you mentioned about them being transferred, it was still, they were in control. It was still a choice that they wanted to do their birth this specific way, and then it was a choice to go, or because of a yellow flag or things like that that needed to be like looked at in a different setting. But that's still beautiful that they could have that choice, you know, as opposed to not even knowing that this option exists. And like I feel like a lot of birth trauma happens when they feel rushed, not heard, not listened to, and then they don't get to make choices. So when it is your choice, it takes all of that kind of trauma of it being out of your hands away. Because yeah, it could be traumatic. And I've heard of a lot of traumatic birth stories from different moms, really wishing and hoping that they could have had a different birth story. So I think it's beautiful, this whole process. And I really just hope more people can advocate for themselves and hire someone like you as a doula or a midwife. But I know, kind of shifting gears a little bit, you've talked a little bit about the importance of building a village and a support system, like before, during, and after. And how do you think you can kind of help facilitate that? I mean, obviously, like you could go in as like someone that's helping. You said meals, you do a lot of childcare when you need, you're kind of like filling the gaps. But how else do you feel like you could help facilitate that village creation? Because we all have to make one.
Yeah, so I love this conversation because it is the village mentality is not present in the United States to me at all. Again, this kind of goes, the village mentality to me goes back to, again, what were our ancestors doing? What were we doing before we kind of just had this more individual lifestyle where you keep to yourself and you don't really have this communal effort of living going on. And by that, I mean, when we look at our ancestors, they did have this communal way of living. They would share food, they would share crops, they would attend, gatherings together or ceremonies together around celebration. Families were, I think, more attuned to what other families were going through, or how other families were living and what kind of needs there were. There were kids running around and families knew to take care of all the children that were running around the village, right? And so when I talk about showing up with the village mentality for families and for women in the postpartum, it's very much around that. How can I show up and be your village for you? Because most people these days do not have a village. I've found in this work that one of the biggest factors that someone tends to bring to me of why they're coming to me for my care is that they don't have other family, or they don't have other friends or people to support them when they go into the postpartum. And that can be a pretty terrifying thing for a lot of people, because then they really start to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do this alone. I don't have anyone to support me. How am I going to cook meals? How am I going to get my other kid to school? How am I going to handle the influx of all the postpartum hormones that I know hit me last time, and be able to do all of this, right? And so that's where, again, that's where doulas come in that postpartum time to be the village. Being the village is supporting the mother. It's supporting being able to care and nurture the mother. It's not just the baby, right? A lot of times people will really focus on the baby, even when they have a village, right? I'll have clients that say, oh, my mom's going to be there. My stepmom's going to be there. My auntie's going to be there. My cousins will be there, and they're all going to show up. And I always tell them, I'm like, okay, but if someone comes into your house and comes into your space, they better be bringing you food. They better come into your house and they better wash some dishes or do some kind of chore, because they need to rest, right? That postpartum period is so vital for rest. And if others are coming into the space, they better be being a village and cleaning, cooking, or sorting of some sort for the mother, right? So that being the village is supporting the mother. It's nurturing the mother and allowing her that space to actually rest. Whereas today in our society, it's like, even with work in a lot of careers, women are expected to go back to work within 6 weeks after they've had a baby. That's crazy. You have a massive wound inside of your uterus from the placenta coming off, from baby being born, not to mention if you had any kind of tearing that happened during birth, not to mention if you were someone that had to go through cesarean, and they expect you to be back on your feet, fully moving. You probably haven't stopped bleeding. Some women may have not stopped bleeding by that time. It's brutal. It's really brutal.
Yeah.
Whereas I'll go back to Mexican culture, we have this cultural belief around cuarentena. It's the 40 days past birth. And in that 40 days, the woman is not supposed to be moving. She is not supposed to be doing anything except for resting, except for eating and taking care of her baby. And that's it. And everyone else is supposed to be taking care of her. So that village mentality is taking care of the mother in that way, allowing her all the rest that she needs to heal and be able to take care of that little human that just came into this world. And it means cooking for her. It means cooking for the family. It means cleaning up little things where needed. It doesn't mean you're doing housekeeping by any means, but even as a doula, if I go into someone's space and I see that, they have some things here, they have some things there, maybe some dishes need to be put back in the cupboards. Like, let me do that, because it takes stress off. If it means that she's not on her feet for longer, then I want to do that task for her. It means giving them support in some way that's showing some love or giving them some nourishment or nurturing. So not only with the food, but I always lean heavily into herbal support. There's lots of really supportive herbs that can help in that postpartum period, whether it's for the hormonal influx that is happening or just that drop that tends to lean into postpartum anxiety or depression. There's herbal support for that. There's herbs that are just good to help nourish the body for the mom if she's deciding to breastfeed. So those are just a few things of being able to show up as the village. You're just taking care of those duties that require a lot of energy, but you're doing them to help nourish her so that she can do what she is meant to do at this time.
That's great. I feel like so many moms need that so desperately. And I wanted to hold my baby. I didn't want someone to just barge in and be like, give him to me. And I was like, no, it felt like I needed to heal while holding him. But nobody feels comfortable just jumping in to doing things. And so I feel like more people just need to get over that and just do it. Like I had a friend who would just say, hey, are you guys home? I'm going to drop off something at your door. I didn't even have to receive it at the door. I didn't have to make any sort of conversation with her. It was just a fresh loaf of bread and some, dinner. And I respected that and I loved her for it. And it was just amazing that she knew that it was like, you don't want to have to come to the door when you're like half dressed and puked on and wearing a diaper. And, it's a lot. And so it was just so beautiful that she would just be like, are you home? I've made you dinner. Here it is, And so
it can be really simple. It can be really, really simple. And it will mean the world to that family or to that mom. And we don't have to overcomplicate it. Sometimes I've gone into spaces and been like, when I was newer and doing doula work, I would be like, oh my gosh, I hope this was enough. And then later they'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. Like it meant everything. And I was like, oh, all I did was like make you something to eat.
Yeah.
it's really, really simple. And we don't have to overcomplicate how we show up. It's just being able to do those little things. And then, like moms want to hold their new baby. That bonding experience is very, very important. Right. And I think, everyone else, whether it's extended family or friends, like they want to hold the new baby. They see new baby. It's so cute. But I think if we were more educated about the fact that, hey, like mom has to take this time to bond and really get to know her baby, like we shouldn't be interfering in that process. Oftentimes, even as a doula, I say there's infant care in there, but that can be pretty minimal and be very dependent on the situation. Oftentimes in that immediate postpartum time, I'm not really providing infant care so much as I am holding the baby so mom can go take a shower, or just holding the baby so she can take care of her other kid for a second. It's because she should be the one taking care of baby, but she needs to be taken care of too. So it's the mother that I always focus on in that immediate postpartum, not so much the infant, but do I have experience in case she needs a question answered or is worried about something when it comes to infant care? Yeah, because I want to be able to provide her guidance so that she can tap more into her intuitive process of taking care of that baby.
That's great. Yeah. I would have asked so many questions about what is normal, should he be breathing this loud when he sleeps,
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought for sure he was like going to stop breathing because I didn't know that some babies just breathe really loud. And then when you go to the doctor and they just dismiss it and be like, yeah, he's fine. And I'm like, but I wake up in the middle of the night because I swear he stopped breathing, but to just have someone, to listen to bounce ideas off of and be like, I hear that a lot, like make it normalized. Or if it doesn't sound normal, to be like, that doesn't sound normal, right? Go get the resources you need. But yeah, there's a lot of scary, when you're sleep deprived and not cared for and, you're trying to learn something new. So to have somebody who could be that help would be amazing. And then a little bit on the village, I have been so blessed to have a good neighborhood, and it's all centralized on this park where we all just kind of congregate. And it's turned into wonderful friendships. We have like potlucks. We go pool party every week, like we just hop around from house to house. And then there's this, hey, I'm struggling. I need to drop my kid off. Can he stay at your house for an hour? It's like, yeah, sure. And so this whole creating your village, it takes work, but I understood the value of it and how it really helps our society, you know, like our kids can play together, our kids can recognize what being a neighbor means. And I think it's beautiful. So I've been really blessed, and I'm like, I don't ever want to leave because you found your village, right? And we're all within like walking or bike distance from each other. So it's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a way to, I think that kind of brings about this question of how do we create a village then? If we don't have one, how do we create one? And that's where, I kind of say, if you don't have extended family or an immediate set of friends that you can lean onto for support, then I tell people, go do some research on doulas in your area or doulas that travel, like get someone that's going to be there for you during this time. But if you do have friends and you do have extended family, or you do have people can lean on, right? Start to have those conversations. Hey, I'm going to be having the baby soon, and I would really love if, we could create, or someone could help me create a meal train for myself, just for those, maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks at the very least. So that meals are covered and I'm not having to worry about that, part of things. It'll take a lot of stress off of the shoulders to be able to do that. Sometimes you can even find, just even within other doulas, I think all doulas have some kind of resources list, but there are so many resources out there, where you can have meal trains created, or they can help you find resources of how am I going to get some meals at this time, like during this time period. That's going to help create that, right? And so I think just being able to have those conversations with your friends, with your family, being able to do the research on how you can get that care provided to you is really important. And that's going to help you create that village. All of my clients that I have served, I create very good connections with, and I have very good client relationships with them. And I always tell them, I'm like, you can always reach out to me at any time. Like, just, I'm here, I'm available to you, because village isn't, I'm only here for a certain amount of time. Village is, I'm here when you need me at any time. Based on my schedule as well, but also,
Right.
They can always just talk to me too. It doesn't even have to be that they are calling me in for a specific service. It's just that I'm here to listen to you, and I'm here to hear you through this journey as well, and see you through this journey. So if that means that you just need to talk to somebody today, I'm here for that. I have clients that just text me from the past, and they're like, oh, like, I have this going on, or this is where baby's at now. And I get so happy because I'm like, they're growing, they're learning. And I love to see all the babies grow just as much as they do as parents too. But I also love to see the parents grow as the babies are growing as well. And then if I get repeat clients, that's always so flattering to me, because I'm like, I love being able to still be their village if they're choosing to grow their family more. And yeah, so.
That's great. Yeah, it's such an honor. I feel like the same kind of way with my previous clients. Like, I get clients who've had issues with their pelvic floor. They, couldn't tolerate intimacy. They, and then now they're like, look, I had a baby, like I was able to take what you taught me, get married, get pregnant, have a baby, all because I could get over this severe pain, because they just couldn't have sex.
Yep.
And so I love getting those messages to be like, look at how far I am now and all the evolution, because I was able to overcome these little hurdles with you and with some guidance, then it's just amazing what people can do when they like run with a few little principles, right? So we could kind of summarize everything here and maybe leave with a couple little tidbits. If you could pick one thing that you wish that every pregnant person could know about birth, what would you say?
You have more than one option in one way to birth your baby. That is not often known when someone becomes pregnant. There is this immediate thought process, I think, that happens today, that when someone becomes pregnant or a family becomes pregnant, that they immediately have to go to the hospital. And that is not the only option that you have. There is a layer of options that you have. You have the hospital. You can go through the OBGYN. You can have one of the on-call doctors just through the hospital. Or you can do research on notable OBGYNs in your area that are known to allow natural birth to happen. You can have a medicated birth, or you can have an unmedicated birth. Totally your choice. You do not have to go into the hospital and have a medication just because it gets pushed into your face. You don't have to accept, you can decline any of the procedures that they offer to you in the hospital. You can ask for more information on something if they are recommending a procedure or they're recommending a medication to you. You can ask why. Get more information about that stuff. Don't let those situations or those scenarios bully you around, right? Just so that the hospital or another provider can get what they want. You have CNMs, you have nurse midwives. Nurse midwives often can provide care in hospitals, and there's some that will provide care out of hospitals for home births. That's another option. You have CPMs or LMs, licensed midwives, certified professional midwives that provide care only in the homes, right? And on the other end of the scale, there are oftentimes unlicensed midwives as well. So you have this full spectrum of choices that you can make of how you want to birth your baby. And we don't often talk about that. There's often this, you're going to birth your baby one way, it's going to be in the hospital. These are the medications that they give to you. This is how it's going to be done. But birth takes responsibility, and it takes being able to be in tune with your autonomy. And when you can do that and do your research and take that responsibility to do your research on what kinds of options you have and what that kind of care looks like, then that's where better birth outcomes will come from for families and for the birthing person. Is you take that into your hands, and that is your power to be able to choose how you want to birth your baby and what's in alignment with what you believe and what you are feeling is going to be right for you. I think within that, there is always the talk of, well, what if I'm high risk or I have other medical things going on? Again, I still believe in medicine. It has its place, but again, dependent on the individual, dependent on the situation, it's what is going to be best for you, right? What questions do you need to ask to get all the information that you can? It's really good to get second, third opinions in birth, to talk to many different people to understand what's actually going on in your body and what's an emergency, what's not an emergency, what's considered high risk, what's not considered high risk. There is a lot. But if you do your due diligence and you go across all the options and what feels right for you, then that is the one thing I would say is the most important for these families. It's just knowing that you have many options that you can, and many routes that you can take to birth your baby. And that if you have a certain vision of what that looks like, then go after that, because it it does matter. It really does.
I love that. And I love how you said it as like, it's a responsibility that you need to take on, and then find the choices that fit for you, and then learn to advocate for those choices as well. And that's really good practice to take on for the rest of your life, because that's what we need to do to take care of ourselves and our family and the growing family. And it's a huge responsibility, but what a wonderful opportunity to have all those choices and to have that power. So one of the main reasons that I wanted to start conversations like this was I wanted women and people to feel strong and supported. And that's why I named it that, because you can feel strong and still need help. You don't have to be strong and need to do everything, but we need to find ways to ask for help, find ways to advocate, find people to help us. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, either for postpartum or potentially going to Aurora Midwifery, how might they get in touch with them? Just tell me a little bit about that, and then I will definitely put links in the comments.
Yeah, so people can get in touch with me for doula services either through my website, through Instagram, or through email. My Instagram is at Atokli, that's ATOCTLI, Birth and Wellness. My website is atoklibirthandwellness.com, and my email is atbirthandwellness@gmail.com. Those are all ways that you can get in touch with me. On Instagram, you can just shoot me a DM. I'm usually on there, so you're very likely to get a response. Same thing with email. I believe on my website, I have contact forms, so you can easily fill one of those out and get in touch with me. As for midwifery services through Aurora, Aurora is located in Mesa in the East Valley. I believe we have a website as well. It's auroramidwifery.com. And typically, I believe with Aurora, you can get in contact through phone with them or through website, and get in touch with our receptionist, and she can get you set up for a consult, a first consult with us. And then through Aurora, you'll get to meet all the midwives. I'm one of the students, so you'll get to meet me too, just in rotation. But Aurora does have 4 different midwives that work through the practice. And I love Aurora Midwifery. I can't say enough good things. It's been amazing to be a student with them. So those are the ways that you can get in contact if you're looking for my personal doula care, or if you're looking for a set of home birth midwives.
Thank you so much, Serene. This was a wonderful conversation. I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope anyone listening, whether they are pregnant, not pregnant, are never going to have a baby, like how to support those that are.
Yeah.
If we can't, take a personal route here, just how do we support those around us and be the village and, create that environment for them. So this was wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay. It was awesome. Loved it.